I understand what you're saying. So I do want to ask a few more questions about Sloan since we've spent so little time talking.
That's okay.
No, it worked out fine actually. I mean, like I'm literally halfway through your output, so it's like, well, should I try to listen to it? And I think, no, I think I know enough. And
Well, should I ask you what you've tried or tell you where to start, or should I tell just people who don't know how to start, or
well, before you do that, I want to
okay.
ask you about your two careers. You said because like most people that realize they like something, they want to learn about it. So I spent a lot of time drawing this week and last week, listening to stuff and watching stuff while I was working. And I think one of the things I watched was it was I think one of your chats with Conan,
Yeah,
and you were talking about how, especially since I'm coming into discovering your band so late, that there was I think you said that there was like a heyday sort of thing situation for
sure.
your, but also that your band always had two parallel careers. There was your career in Canada, and then
Mhm.
there's your career elsewhere that isn't Canada. And I've watched you guys on some screaming teenagers MTV kind of show from like your day, and people were like losing their minds. And it's very cute and stuff. Is that sort of the heyday, like the second, third, and fourth records kind of period?
Yeah, but we we got a record deal in the wake of the success of Nirvana, like a lot of bands did, probably
Mm-hmm.
Melvin's included or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
did they sign to Warner or something? Like, what were they on?
they signed to Atlantic. They
Atlantic.
the Nirvana connection did not hurt a lot of people, and especially didn't hurt them. So when the time came, that's what happened. For sure.
But how many records did they do on Atlantic?
They did three. They did Houdini, Stoner Witch, and Stag.
Right.
And then that was it. So three
So
three albums.
so we got signed to Geffen, which was like Nirvana's label. So like we were hot shit. Like we were a big story in Canada and like an enormous story in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Like we were really like the kings of the town in
Yeah.
1992. And we had a record come out in October 92 on Geffen. So that was exciting. Um, and it seemed like we had gone from being a local band. We played like 11 shows or something, and then we were signed, and all of a sudden we're this international band. And our act is we're essentially copying um, My Bloody Valentine's 1988 record. Isn't anything. It was like 4 years old, and
Right.
then it's like, oh, you got to go to England, and it's like, well, that's going to be kind of embarrassing because like they're going to be like this. Yeah, we liked this 4 years ago. Anyway, so our first record was really kind of, we were just like a copycat uh shoegaze band, whatever. This was like a local band, and then we
Yeah.
were given this opportunity, and then we decided to reinvent ourselves and be like this pop band. It was like, wouldn't it be cool if we didn't, if let's get out of this grunge uh ghetto. Like this is gonna come down. This is gonna be over. Let's get out before this comes crashing down.
You weren't
Uh,
wrong.
Well, the other band that was kind of doing it was Pavement. Pavement had more pop record that year, which I refused to listen to, and I probably haven't listened to since. But I was just like, I don't want to be influenced by any of that stuff. So when
Yeah.
we made our second record, which is kind of our first real record of the sort of modern band that we became, that was kind of a huge flop. Like our first record did okay. We sold 40,000 records or something in the States and 40,000 in Canada. Like I was like, whoa, this is. And then our second record sold like 9,000 records or something. And then it was just like, that was probably going to be. We technically weren't dropped from Geffen, but we kind of broke up the band. That's a long, boring story. But anyway, so
Right.
then our third and fourth record and fifth record, like that's kind of our heyday. I think of it as like 96, 97, 98 into 99. So our 1999 record comes out, our fifth record, and that's kind of the beginning and the end. Like we sold way less, and rock music is harder to. I think of '99 as like you're either in the Backstreet Boys or you're in Corn. Like, are you sweet or are you sour? Because you can't be Cheap Trick anymore. You can't be like a just a rock band. Like it's
Oh
who
man,
cares?
look how long it took Cheap Trick to kind of get their footing after they had their wilderness years. It took them a long time to figure. That's another story, but
Yeah.
like,
But so 96 to 99, we were doing well, and we uh, we went to Australia, we went to Japan. We never really got. Yeah, I think only our first record ever came out properly in England. We couldn't really get arrested over there, and then we went to Japan 3 times. We went to Australia twice or 3 times, but now we only ever just go to Canada and the States. But in Canada, we've been on mainstream media, like we've been on radio and TV. But in the States, we've got played on 120 Minutes twice or something in 1993.
right.
And then maybe we were on MTV once in 1997 on a show called Oddville. Like that's the end of our. We were on the other Conan O'Brien, on his show in 1999 when someone canceled, like on December 23rd, we flew down.
Yeah.
So like that's the extent of our American exposure, except for college radio and stuff, or like cool WFMU or KEXP and these kinds of things.
Right. But at the same time, it's like, even though in your own country there is a certain period, you're like kind of what's the word for a band that sticks around for a long time, and there's enough people that love what the band does that you can do anything you want and it's going to sustain. Is that like a legacy band or something like that?
Well, a legacy band is a term that I can accept. Would say is a journeyman. Do you know that term? Like if you're
Yeah. Like
or just journey.
Journey. Well, all I know is when I started writing about, man, where have I been? This band's amazing. I've never had so many people reach out to congratulate me on discovering a band ever.
So now but who's reaching out to you? They're just like people who know Sloan and they say
People that like,
right.
There's a guy who lives down here named Alex.
That lives where? Down by you?
North Carolina.
Oh, and he writes for Tape Op?
Yes. He interviewed me.
Yeah, I know that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, so him and about
supporter
people just kind of, man, and then just glowing. It's like, oh, okay. So, it seems to me like you're the kind of band that can go anywhere and you're going to get a certain amount of people that are always going to be interested in what you do. Like plenty of other bands like Melvins or Voivod or whoever, even though that's totally different music. Does that make sense? Because
yes, yeah. But so I guess the end of the two paths is like in Canada, we can play having been on the radio and on the MTV equivalent Much Music up here. It means like we can go into a small town and play at a roadhouse, and people be like, oh yeah, I know a couple of those songs. Just like Joe Q Public or Sally Housecoat or whatever, like Housewives and Little Girls, as they would say on Kids in the Hall. Like, but in the States, it's just like music nerds and people who also like Fountains of Wayne or like just like meaning like we can play in Moncton, New Brunswick. And we can play to as many people as we get in Chicago, which is a huge city. Yeah. But the people in Moncton, actually Moncton is a super cool little town. But in Chicago, the people know the B-sides and they're like, play this song from a EP. And whereas in Canada, we get more people, but they might be like, play the song from the Future Shop ad or whatever. Like,
Got it. I understand. And you're working on like a new record, right?
Yeah, we have a new record that's done, and now we just have to sort of like wait for vinyl to be made, and it comes out in the States through a label called Yep Rock, and I think in Canada it'll come out through our own kind of Murder Records label. Will be kind of the label, even though that's kind of without a staff. But like I think Universal will distribute it in Canada.
Okay, so you're in charge of your own. Well, you always had a record label from before the first record, if I remember from my
That's
research.
right. Yeah. So that was always a kind of our insurance policy when we signed to Geffen. It was just like, well, this is probably not going to last very long, and so we kind of had this kind of parallel record label insurance policy for when the shit hit the fan at the major. But we also were into being a local band. Like it was all very exciting to be signed to Geffen, of course, but we
Yeah,
still lived in Halifax, and we weren't really playing around town so much anymore, but we wanted to contribute and we wanted to document the scene, and we knew there was all kinds of cool bands happening, and Sub Pop actually ended up signing a bunch of them. There was a group called Eric's Trip, there was a group called Hardship Post, there was a group called Jail. They all got signed to Sub Pop. There was a group called Thrush Hermit. They got signed to uh, Atlantic, I think, or I think it was Atlantic, and there was a group called the Inbreds. They weren't from Halifax, but they were friends, and their records came out on Murder Records. And there was a short-lived label called Tag that was part of Atlantic
hmm
in the mid '90s. They got signed to that for a split second, and then our second act is that we got signed to a label called the Enclave, which again was existed for about 5 minutes, but it had like Bell and Sebastian and World Party. Like it was going to be great. Like, wow, what a great place to be. And then of course it went under.
right. Are you excited about the new record?
I am, yeah. Like I always think that, when we set out to do it, I'm like, I don't want to make a stinker record. Like I concede that some of the records are better than others, but I don't feel like it's embarrassing for us to be making records at this point. Like I think they're still cool, and this would be our 13th full length, and um, I don't know. I just think we have a large body of work, which I recommend people check out. But I also know it's kind of daunting to look at a 200 plus song catalog and say, I can't wait to dive into this.
Well, on that note, since you actually kind of brought it up, to newbies like me,
Yeah,
and people that might to the 10 people or so that are going to be turning in not knowing who you are, uh,
sure.
if you could recommend like 5 or 4 of your records for people to start off with these, if you like
Right.
these, go on. What would those 4 or 5 records be?
Well, I think of our third record as my favorite. I like the story of it. It was like we were kind of came back from the ashes of having kind of broken up, and we're like, let's just do one more record. And we had just done a major label record for tons of money, and it was a giant flop. And then we just went back and we made a record for cheap, and it was a big success. And
I
so
love
that's
that,
called
and the drum sound on that record is fucking awesome too.
so that's one chord to another.
Right, the blue
Right.
cover.
Yes. And so the drums for that. So Andrew had moved to Toronto from Halifax, which was part of part of the trouble we were having as a band. I was pissed at him for moving. I was like, we're trying to make something of ourselves here. And he's like, well, my girlfriend moved to Toronto. I was like, but I'm trying to make something of my life. God damn it.
You're
And
ruining.
and he was ruining it. But anyway, so he was living up there, and then we kind of broke up, and we were like, let's make one more record. Come down, and I sent him some demos. I was like, let's just do all the drums in one day. We'll record it on my 4-track cassette player, the drums, and we'll just do it in our little crappy recording space, in our little practice space. So he came down, and in an afternoon, he knocked out all the drums on the 4-track cassette, a Tascam 4-track, and then he went home, and then we took the 4-track into a 16-track studio, and we put the 4 tracks of drums on, and then we just overdubbed on top of it, and that's why it's so boxy and small.
That's awesome.
And
That
so I think that record sounds cool, and I think that's the record where even though we were all writing songs from the first record, I would think that that's the first record where Patrick really felt like he was actually part of the band, and his two songs were like the big singles on that record. And he was always kind of thought that he was in someone else's band, kind of thing. We knew him he was in hardcore bands, like he was in a band called the Ripping Convulsions. Like that's the band that I knew that he was in, like in '88 or whatever. But so he was finally kind of felt like, yeah, this is my band too.
Yeah.
And I think that he referred to Jay and I as the alt Gestapo, and like we were trying to be in this indie rock band, and Patrick was like, I just want to put this big fucking Ace Frehley solo on here. I'm just going to do it. And as he was doing it, Jay and I, of course, are looking at each other like, we'll get him to change that later. And then it was just like, you know what? Just let him do it. Like everybody should be allowed to be themselves. Otherwise, what are we? And so, and of course, that song ends up being, it's called The Good in Everyone. It's like one of the greatest songs we have.
It's a great, and it's like not even 2 minutes long, and you wish
yeah, it's like
longer, and it's over before you know it. And this is really funny. You brought up Ace Frehley, but I think his voice reminds me of, and I don't know why I thought this, it reminded me of Carl Wilson impersonating Ace Frehley. Because I think Carl Wilson has one of the greatest voices of all time.
I agree, although I can never tell the Beach Boys apart. I know certain songs that Carl does, but Patrick has no time for the Beach Boys. Not that he has no time for them, but like he knows nothing about them.
But like, come on, Carl Wilson and Ace Frehley combined?
No, I can't wait to tell Jay that. But like in terms of like both those reference points are fine within the context of my band. Like Jay loves the Beach Boys. I love Kiss. Patrick loves he loves Pill. He loves Killing Joke. He loves like kind of post-punk. He loves Jesus and Mary Chain is his favorite. But he likes Kiss, I guess. AC/DC. He loves AC/DC.
I love AC/DC.
But so our third record, I think it's good. It's really kind of Beatle-y. Like if you can, I don't know, some people maybe can't stomach that, but
you guys, like, there's a lot of Beatles-esque moments, but you guys don't really sound like any Beatles. I mean, to me at least, maybe it's just reminiscent of, but like you guys don't sound like
the Ruddles.
Huh?
The Ruddles.
Or how like certain, even Cheap Trick, as great as they can be, how they obviously will take nods from actual Beatles songs and stick them in their songs. They always have. Or
we've done it. Don't get me wrong. It happens.
Okay, well, it's still just.
But I never wanted to be like a corny '60s pastiche, or like wearing vests, or I don't know. Like I like punk, and I like '80s. Like I like new wave, and like I I'm not interested in being skinny tie guy.
Right, or having a bowl haircut with a handkerchief and banging on a tambourine or whatever.
Right, although I fully support those guys too. But although as I get this, I think I'm probably going to start wearing an ascot as this foot comes in my chicken neck.
That's part of why I have a beard.
Right, maybe I'll be doing that too.
The Carl Wilson beard.
Right. I love that Carl Wilson doing Ace Frehley, but. Anyway, so yeah, one chord to another, and then I've already spent too much time answering this question. I'll just say the next two records, Navy Blues and Between the Bridges, I think, and even the second record, Twice Removed, I think people think of that as our classic run from Twice Removed, one chord, Navy Blues, and maybe Between the Bridges. But I also really like a record called Never Hear the End of It, and which is called that because it's a record, it's got 30 songs. So it's like so long that you'll never hear the end of it. It's the joke. And I think that's a great one too. It's our kind of most eclectic record. The record we did previous to that, we did with a producer character who tried to make a really kind of streamlined record that's very not eclectic, which I'm not embarrassed of, but I just think is kind of unidimensional. And our kind of response to that was to make it like an incredibly eclectic 30-song crazy album. And I just think it's pretty cool.
Okay.
And Steve McDonald likes it.
That's yeah. Well, Stephen McDonald and his brother are good barometers for taste in music, and they like music because they like music. Obviously, I get the sense that you guys obviously like music, and as a listener, I know I like music, so that's probably how this all started, I guess.
I would say that a band like the McDonald Brothers and myself and Jay from our band especially, I don't mean to talk on anyone's behalf, but like I think that would all agree that we're fans of music, and just like it's like I happily tell you what my influences are, and I always find myself wanting to do whatever I would imagine a fan would want us to do, or I'm trying to create a band that's worthy of analysis, and 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 you know that has uh, not only albums, not only hit songs, or not hit songs, but just like great songs, but it's like great albums, like great eras. Like, what about these three? I like these three, like all that kind of like stuff that fandom. Uh, you want to encourage your fans to like, my favorite guy is this guy, and or my second favorite guy is this guy, and I like this era. I don't know, just kind of stuff that
No,
you argue about.
I know exactly what you're saying because I too, I played music off and on, and I haven't had the success and longevity of having one thing with three other people last that long. But I was always in love with the idea of being in a band and playing music, and for various reasons, that stuff never worked out um, for me the way it did for some other people. But the idea of liking this stuff so much, and even if the idea of being in a band, the romantic idea of being in a band is you learn is kind of bullshit, sort of after a while. Like, oh, we all don't get along, and we're not living in the same house like the monkeys or whatever. But the idea of it and what it represented is still so powerful, you know. And also just liking stuff and not being tied down to saying, well, if I like this means I can't like this. Or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, if you like something, you like it, regardless of what it is. And, I don't really buy into the whole, well, if you're like this, then you're this kind of person, and you can't like that because then you'll be that kind of person. Those things that people tend to invent in their head.
Yeah, but I think of that as like a young person's thing, like, how do you define yourself, young person? Well, I like this kind of music, and not very many people like it, and I really like Nevermind. It's like, really? That sold millions of copies. Yes, but I have the vinyl, so I like, you know what I mean? Like,
Or
but when you get older, it's like, well, who gives a shit? But
no, I agree. I agree.
but
Um,
when you're a punk rocker in the '80s and all that kind of stuff, like it's that you it's gradual to let that stuff go, because when you define yourself a certain way, then yeah, after a while you have to sort of admit, it's like, oh, I didn't have to hate the Bee Gees this whole time, or whatever, that kind of stuff.
no, I just didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about, well, Bee Gees are incredible songwriters and had two great periods. They had their disco period, and then they were lambasted for that because whatever. And then their '60s stuff. So when all that stuff started to happen, and I secretly thought that these songs were good, I just didn't really tell anybody.
Well, we wanted to. I don't know if we started out as open as we became, but like definitely, like Jay's favorite songwriter is Barry Gibb. Like, there's this, like, I don't know when that
There's
became
no,
apparent, but
there's no denying he's a good songwriter.
yeah. But I also, whatever, I want to be all things to all people. I think I want to be able to sing 7 seconds songs and Bee Gees songs, whatever.